The Pleiadian Mission, A Time of Awareness by Randolph Winters. Part 6. During my visit to Switzerland, there was an occasion when I was visiting with one of the Figu members about the Codex, and I was shown a book which recorded the lives of many of the old Lyran spirits. Each page provided the names and accomplishments of many different spiritual beings. As I looked through this book, I was surprised to see so many historic names on Earth. Truly, the old Lyrans have been working under the Codex for thousands of years. For better or worse, they always seem to make their mark in society in some way. The book went on to say that there were 5 different colonizations of Lyrans on Earth, some more violent than others. They had been the white seed that had forever changed the evolution of humanity on Earth. Currently, 2/3 of white people on Earth are from the Lyran genetic influence as a result of these 5 colonizations. As I flipped through the pages of the book, more of the names were unfamiliar to me, but on one page there were the names of 12 different spirits listed. I didn't recognize any of the names. The page looked different from the others, so I just had to ask about it. The names were of a special group of Lyrans who are now all in material bodies on Earth. The Pleiadians had given the names to Billy, and he was to watch out for these 12, for they would be drawn to him for reasons which were not explained to me. I was told that they believed that I was one of the 12, possibly number 4, based on the information I had given them about my dreams and my family background. Other considerations as to why they thought I was one of them were not explained to me. I inquired as to whether or not any of the other names had shown up yet, but I was told they had not. As of 1987, so far I was the first. The future of Earth. Through the awareness of how our current civilization came about, we can begin to see ourselves in a new light. The white race, the white people on Earth, is not superior to other races, just possibly older than most of the others. If 2/3 of the white race is of the Lyran descent, then they have lived more material lifetimes than other races and have more of an obligation to be teachers and role models to those who are younger. As we learn more about our origins and our history, perhaps we can start to come together as one people, humanity. It is easy to see by the history of the Lyrans that humanity has chosen the path of power and greed and ego to guide their destiny, instead of the more spiritual path of love and soul and understanding. Here on Earth are the spirits of these old Lyran warriors who are still playing the part in our development as a civilization. We can learn a great lesson from this legacy of history. Here we are again, a planet of diverse people whose leaders refuse to get along, but instead play dangerous playground games with weapons of mass destruction. Just as in the Lyran past, we are in a dangerous position where we have the technology to destroy all of humanity, and it is in the hands of these power-crazy egos who are obsessed with the lust for control over others. Their sickness of prejudice and racism rules their thinking as they finance wars so that brother can kill brother. If we are to have peace on Earth, we must rise up against the negative thinking that controls the Earth. We must use the power of love and light to diffuse the anger and hostility that causes us to fight. I have always liked the expression, "Suppose they gave a war and nobody showed up." If the teachers of the New Age can use the power of their light to show others how to live with unconditional love and balance in their lives, we can convince a lot of people to not show up. The answer lies in the knowledge that we are eternal spiritual beings, and we are all connected directly together by cosmic creation consciousness. If we can see each other as souls and not material beings with certain colored skin, we can discover the spiritual bonding that will lead us to peace. Earth is moving into a time of heightened spiritual awareness and soul evolution. As the high energy of the New Age takes its effect, more and more Earth people will begin to discover their spiritual selves and develop the power of higher consciousness. As this event naturally continues to occur, these spiritually aware people will provide the evidence that we are more than just material beings. Others will see that there is more to life than just the material existence and chasing the dollar and property and trinkets. And a consciousness will develop to oppose the cries of war and hatred. For the first time in the development of our current civilization, there will be a more spiritual and peaceful solution to our problems. Earth will start to learn that we can all live together in peace if we only shed the need for material power and greed. Real happiness in life does not come from the attainment of material goods, but from the inner peace and love that is found on the spiritual path inside the heart of every person. For many decades, these spiritual arguments against war have been laughed at and disregarded by the powers that rule. Spiritual people are regarded as unrealistic, crazy, and just plain unimportant. But very quickly, within a few decades, we will see the tide has actually shifted already, as the people of the earth are drawn more to the spiritual side, which provides a way to live in peace and harmony. Eventually, over the next 100 years, the acceleration of high energy will so dramatically change the consciousness of Earth that a whole new society will emerge that will forever change the way we live together. If, however, we do not learn from the history lesson given to us by the Pleiadians, we may become just one more chapter in the ongoing list of past civilizations that have destroyed themselves, like the Lyrans have done so many times. The chronology of Earth history. This will show important moments in Earth history based on information from the Pleiadians. Dates are only estimates to show the chronology of events. 22 million BC. The first Lyrans came to Earth to colonize. 387,000 BC. Lyrans come to Earth, 144,207 of them, and settled here, forever changing the genetics of Earth humanity. 228,000 BC. A Lyran leader named Asael leads 360,000 Lyrans to a new home in the Pleiades. 226,000 BC. Asael dies and his daughter Pleia becomes ruler. The system is now called the Pleias. 225,000 BC. Pleia scout ships discover Earth, and colonies are founded here and on Mars and Milona. 196,000 BC. War breaks out on Earth and its people are evacuated to the Pleiades. 40 years later, Milona destroys itself and becomes the asteroid belt. Mars is thrown out of orbit and all life is destroyed on Mars. 116,000 BC. For the past 80,000 years, several small colonies have been tried by the Lyrans, mostly composed of exiled criminals from Pleia. 71,344 BC. The Great Pyramids of Egypt are built, pyramids in China and Mexico by the Lyrans. 58,000 BC. The Great Plan is developed. The Pleiadians build a great society on Earth that lasts for almost 10,000 years. 48,000 BC. The Ishwish named Pelagon comes to Earth and builds a wonderful society that lasts around 10,000 years. 31,000 BC. The continent of Atlantis is founded by a man named Atlant, who comes with his people from the Barnard star system. 30,500 BC. The city of Mu is founded by Muras, the father of Atlant's wife, Caryatide. His empire is eventually called Lemuria. 30,000 BC. A race of black-skinned people comes from Sirius to planet Earth. 16,000 BC. Arus is exiled from Earth for trying to start wars. He hides out with his followers in the Beta Centauri system, planning revenge. 14,000 BC. Arus and his men return to Earth and settle in Hyperborea, which is in the current location of Florida. 13,000 BC. The scientist Semjasa, the second in command to Arus, creates two Adams who bear a child named Seth. This becomes the legend of Adam and Eve. 11,000 BC. Arus II attacks the Sumerians who flee into the mountains. At the same time, 11,000 BC, a group of extraterrestrials of unknown origin arrive, led by a leader named Viracocha, who controls the city of Tiahuanaco. His base was on an island named Malt. He provided the inhabitants of Easter Island the tools to build the strange statues which were representative of him. 9,500 BC. The Pleiadians caused the old spirit form from Lasson to come to Earth for the first time. 9,498 BC. Atlantis and Mu destroy each other and ruin the planet. The air is not breathable for 50 years. All survivors are driven underground. 9,448 BC. Jehovan, the third son of Eros II, takes over the three remaining tribes left on Earth and becomes their ruler. 8,239 BC. The destroyer comet passes closely by Earth and causes the Atlantic Ocean to split. 8,104 BC. The biblical flood. 6,000 BC. Venus is pulled out of its orbit around the planet Uranus by the destroyer comet and is in orbit around the Sun. 5,981 BC. The destroyer comet comes close to Earth, causing great destruction. It also changes the orbit of Venus again. 4,930 BC. The destroyer comet once again passes close to Earth, causing tidal waves of destruction. 5000 BC, Jehav, the son of Jehovan, takes over rulership. 1500 BC, the destroyer comet passes close to Earth, causing the Santorini volcano to erupt. It also pulls Venus into its current orbit position around the Sun. 1320 BC, Jehav is murdered by his son Arusem, who has two sons named Salem and Ptah. 1010 BC, Arusem is driven out of power by his sons and hides out under the Great Pyramid with his followers. They call themselves the Bathath. 600 BC, Hen takes over from Arusem and rules the Bathath. Hen is called Jehovah by the Hebrews. 586 BC, a group of Andromedans comes to Earth. They create the lines of Nazca. 80 BC, Hen is overthrown by Kamagol I. 40 BC, Salem turns over power to Pleiadian, his son, the last Pleiadian ruler on Earth. 10 AD, Pleiadian returns to the Pleiades after procreating the spirit form of Emmanuel, Yeshua, to carry on the teachings of creation. 32 AD, Emmanuel, Yeshua, is crucified on the cross. He does not die at this time. 115 AD, Emmanuel, Yeshua, dies and is buried at Srinagar, India. He leaves 3 sons. 189 AD, Emmanuel's name is changed to Jesus Christ and his teachings are completely rewritten to form what is eventually called Christianity. 1000 AD, Kamagol I is taken over by his son Kamagol II and imprisoned for life until he dies. 1937 AD, Kamagol II's second in command is called Aruseak. He decides to leave on his own. He becomes known as Ashtar Shiran and tries to influence the people of Earth. 1937 AD, Edouard Albert Meier, Billy Meier, is born in Bulach, Switzerland. 1975 AD, the Pleiadians start physical contact with Billy Meier. 2004 AD, possible conflict with an alien aggressor. 2255 AD, the year the Pleiadians predict the destroyer comet will return close to Earth. Life in the Pleiades. Billy likes to talk about what he has learned from the Pleiadians. His contacts were mostly with Semyase, the Pleiadian woman of whom he obviously has many fond memories. I could even feel a little sadness in him when he spoke about her. It was obvious that he greatly missed her. I remember one night in particular, we were standing outside under the clear, beautiful Swiss sky, and he was pointing out into the stars to show me where the Pleiades are. I was asking him about the planet Era, where the Pleiadians had come from, and if he ever had the chance to go there. According to the information I had already learned so far, he had not visited the Pleiades or seen their civilization. But I was wrong. He had traveled there in 1984 with Quetzal, the Pleiadian base commander on Earth, and spent 3 days learning about this advanced culture from there. Quetzal had frequently come by to see Billy after his normal contacts had stopped with Semyase. They had become good friends, and Quetzal had invited Billy to return to the home planet of Era with him. Quetzal needed to return there for some reason, and Billy was welcome to go with him. Visiting the Pleiades. Even though Quetzal had been stationed in Mexico for many years, his home was still in the Pleiades. Whenever he had the chance, he would return for a few days to once again be among the level of consciousness that far more suited him. There he could relax and let the concerns of his command on earth vanish for a while and enjoy the serenity of his home world. As he and Billy approached Era, Quetzal explained how their society had developed into a peaceful world of unity and harmony. Billy was well aware that the Pleiadians had not always lived like this, but had won their peace through thousands of years of war and struggle, a lesson that he hoped would be understood on Earth. As the speeding beam ship broke into the Pleiadian atmosphere, Billy was surprised to see that the terrain looked so much like Earth. Not only was Era mostly water, but the mountains and forests reminded him of his home in Switzerland. There were no large cities with towering buildings as on Earth, but instead the small population of Era was spread out into smaller communities that spanned the planet evenly. Even within these local communities, people lived in more rural settings and kept a distance from each other. It was like they were living in nature, tucked away in little settlements that were almost undetectable from the ground. As they flew over several small populated areas that looked like towns, Quetzal explained that almost all of the manufacturing and production of products for living was done on other planets in the Pleiadian solar system, so as not to upset the ecology of Era. They had long since developed a balance with nature that was well protected by all other Pleiadians on other planets. Nowhere on Era was there a smokestack or pollution of any kind. The atmosphere was 100% perfectly clean and healthy. This helped contribute to the good health of the Pleiadians. This helped contribute to the good health and the long lifespan of over 700 years on average. The beam ship touched down on a landing area at Quetzal's home. The ship's drive system was shut down, and Billy and Quetzal stepped out into a beautiful, clear, sunny day. One deep breath of the clean air was all Billy needed to be reminded of how poor the air on Earth had become. Quetzal had informed him that on Earth the oxygen content was dropping to very dangerously low proportions, which would lead to more disease and more damage of nature, plants, and animals. Here on Era, Billy's lungs gasped as he felt the surge of pleasure just from breathing. The idea that the Pleiadians were being so careful with their world Era was very encouraging and inspiring to Billy. Quetzal's house was white in color and resembled a dome structure, not unlike some of the future-looking homes on Earth that Jacques Fresco has designed from the Venus Project over 50 years ago. Quetzal showed Billy around and explained some of the technology that was built into the home that monitored the air, communications, food supply, sleeping quarters and conditions, health of inhabitants, and many other aspects of living. Organic intelligence, just like that on the beam ships, was also present here and was built into every house on the planet, helping create a very high standard of living and zero stress. Located just a few hundred yards from the main house was another similar-looking home that housed another of Quetzal's family. He had 2 marriages and 2 families of children. Here on Era, this was very common, as any one person can certainly love more than one other person, and nobody owns anybody or their behavior. In a society that has all but eliminated emotional problems such as jealousy, most Pleiadians entered into more than one marriage. In Quetzal's case, his marriages were very happy and were providing him with many hours of pleasure with his wives and children. Many Pleiadians have gardens, but don't actually work in them. The task of maintaining the garden and food supply was normally carried out by machines. Quetzal, however, was proud to show Billy that he was working on his own garden with a set of hand tools that Billy had provided him with from Earth many years before. It was quite an odd thing for Quetzal to be working out in his own garden without machines. He even had garden gloves and some seeds and shovels from Earth, which had attracted quite a bit of attention from his neighbors, for they had never seen anything like it before. The idea of working with the soil and getting your hands all dirty was quite a novelty and was catching on with Quetzal's friends. Beyond the garden was another interesting-looking building that had special interest to Quetzal. He had taken advantage of his travels to many other worlds and started a collection of different kinds of vehicles. There were many cars, bicycles, and trucks from Earth, as well as many other travel vehicles that were very unusual and strange to Billy. Quetzal had over 100 strange contraptions in his little museum and took great pride in understanding all of them. He often worked on them and kept them in good running condition. The Pleiadians have long understood the power of thought and the spiritual bonding that connects all living beings together through cosmic creation consciousness. Because of this, they are very protective of the consciousness of thought that is created by all who live on Erra. Over thousands of years of development, their thought processes are tuned into one another at very high levels. If visitors to Erra project negative thoughts, they will be asked to leave the planet quickly so as not to disturb the wonderful balance of thought energy that everyone enjoys. The ability to project one's thoughts to any other place on the planet is very common and is the socially accepted method of visiting each other. Telepathy, the ability to communicate by thought, is practiced by almost every Pleiadian. Devices such as phones are obviously non-existent. Try for a moment to envision what life would be like on Earth if everyone on the planet were contributing part of their thought energy to a common pool that was used to protect the health and well-being of all life on Earth, the animal kingdom, the food, the health of all inhabitants, the water, the plants, everything. There would be no greed, no hate, no anger, no racism, no sexism, no negative thinking, but only true understanding and love among everyone. Then, if anyone wished to connect with any other person individually, they could send them a message just like we do with email or phone. Even though most communication is psychic, there is still a tube type of system to travel documents around the planet. Humans can also travel to almost anywhere on the planet in a very short time. This tube system is mostly above ground and available to everyone. When you are riding on the tube, there is no sensation of movement because the problems of gravity and energy have long since been overcome by the Pleiadians. The tube cars are something like our monorail systems on Earth, but in a vacuum and magnetic levitation, just like Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project predicted 50 years ago. As with other structures on Erra, the tubes can think and carry on a conversation with you about your destination and answer any questions that you may have about the scenery or topography or weather of the place you are going. Billy was only able to stay on Era for 3 days with Quetzal and found it very hard to return to Earth. Life in the Pleiades was such a joy to the spirit that just the thought of returning to the low vibration consciousness of Earth was not very appealing. Quetzal had made it even harder by suggesting to Billy that he could move to Era with his family if he liked and leave the cares of Earth behind. This was a very hard decision indeed, for life on Era was very stimulating and creative. All the way home, Billy was thinking about it, but he knew he would have to stay on Earth to fulfill his mission that he had put so much energy into. The trip back to Earth took around 7 hours, giving Quetzal a chance to educate Billy on many other facts about his planet and its people. There were many similarities about Earth and Era that were not accidental. After all, Earth had been originally colonized by the Pleiadian ancestors who had brought with them plants, animals, and foods from their own world. Over the past several thousand years, Earth had become much like Era in many ways. The Pleiades. The Pleiades are a small cluster of stars located in the constellation of Taurus the Bull. During the winter months, you can look to the northern hemisphere, and if you look closely, you can see 6 or 7 little stars in a small cluster that are sometimes mistakenly called the Little Dipper. There are actually 7 main stars in the Pleiadian cluster, but usually only 6 can be seen by the naked eye. Depending on the time of night that you look at them, this little cluster may look like a small saucepan with a handle on the left side. Depending, of course, where you live on planet Earth. If this is your position, then you can move your eyes to the star in the top right corner. It is named Taygeta, and is the area where our visitors from the Pleiades live on Era. If we were able to fly towards Taygeta and continue on past it for several more light years, there would be a group of 254 blue suns. Here, our ancestors live in a solar system much like our own. So much has been written about the Pleiades throughout our history. They are sometimes called our 7 sisters or the daughters of Zeus. In the Christian Bible, they are mentioned frequently as the 7 stars. The Kiowa Indians have a folktale that says 7 Indian maidens were being chased by bears. The Great Spirit came to protect the maidens by raising a giant tower to block the bears' path. The bears fought to reach the escaping maidens, but left powerful claw marks that are seen in today's Devil's Tower in Wyoming. The young maidens were then placed into the sky and became the 7 stars of the Pleiades by Great Spirit, who protected them in that way. The Pleiades also show up in Egypt. For those who study the geometry of the Great Pyramid, Cheops on the Giza Plateau, many unusual mathematical coincidences present themselves. For instance, the rotation of our solar system about the Pleiades is approximately 25,827.5 years. And if you take the base diagonals of the pyramid at Cheops, which are 12,913.75 pyramidal inches, and multiply them by 2, you get exactly 25,827.5. Is there a connection? I wonder. Additionally, it must be mentioned that the Maya believe that 8 Pleiadians, 4 men and 4 women, came to Earth and brought with them corn and cacao and taught the Maya about their calendrical systems and how to build pyramids. It is not known from which planet or which star in the Pleiades that these Maya came. Merope. In 1771, an astronomer named Charles Messier was the first to chart the sparkling Pleiades. From atop a hotel in Paris, he charted 45 stars in the system. Some of them may have been planets. The Pleiades later became designated as M45 on the star chart. Several other observations and mappings have been made since then, and now it is believed that there are more than 2,300 stars in the Pleiades. Era, the home planet of the Pleiadians, is located in the system around Tegeta, approximately 500 light-years from Earth. It is just 10% smaller than Earth and is rotating in a system with 8 other planets. Pleiadians now occupy 4 of the planets with cities and manufacturing. Less than 500,000 humans live on Era. They have concluded that this is the ideal population for their world for several reasons. Their understanding of how the universe was created and how it is evolving, along with the creational spirit, has led them to regard planets as part of creation that are also evolving, and they therefore treat all planets with respect, just as they do animals, trees, and all other humans and non-humans in the universe. Population control has come about in a desire to keep their society spread out and sharing the resources of the planet equally. There is also the consideration that they like to live in connection with the spiritual energy produced by nature. This seems to require keeping the population at a certain level so as not to overpower nature's energy or draw too much resources from their loving planet. This is a rather refreshing attitude, since here on Earth the resources of our planet are considered to just be for the taking, and most people give the planet no consideration at all, and if they do, it's just thought of as some giant ball rotating through space, and we can do whatever we want with it. Many years ago, when the Pleiadians first traveled to Earth, it was because of the similarities of the 2 planets, Era and Earth. Not only is the breathable atmosphere similar, but nature is much the same on both planets as far as the oceans and mountains and plant life go. Over the years, the similarities are even closer, since samples of plants, minerals, and animals have been taken to the Pleiades and developed there, and they originally brought lots of plants, minerals, and animals with them to planet Earth. It is for this reason that the Pleiadians have found Earth to be so very comfortable to visit periodically. Language. The Pleiadian language is not so dissimilar to our own as far as the sound and phrases. For instance, in their language, an hour is called an odu, a day is called a musal, and a month is called an asar. It seems that the forefathers of the Pleiadians who visited Earth influenced our civilization many times in our past, and they have left behind the influence of their language, which has worked its way into some of the languages we have on Earth. For instance, citizens of Era may pass each other and offer a simple greeting to one another by saying Salom, a word which means peace and wisdom. In Hebrew, we find the word Shalom, which means peace, and is normally used as a greeting or farewell. This word was influenced by distant relatives of the Pleiadians over 9,000 years ago. Era, the home planet. The planet Era has a green sky atmosphere which they control. It contributes to their health and stress-free way of life. Pleiadians on Era sleep only a few hours a day because they have an advanced method of psychic control that induces deep sleep very quickly. Most of the food they ate is still grown in the ground nearby their homes, and is affected by collective thoughts that control the digestive system, so they don't have to eat much at all, and the energy from the food seems to last them much longer. They explained again that on many occasions they have brought foods, plants, and animals from Earth and other planets to their home, which gives them a rich selection and variety to choose from. They have a very high technical understanding of how food affects their thinking process and emotional states. They are primarily vegetarians, but sometimes indulge in a small amount of meat when they feel they are becoming a little too dreamy or spacey or airy or lightheaded. They have discovered that meat gives you grounding in your thinking, so they have engineered a small animal which looks something like a rabbit that supplies all of their meat. They normally would not eat any other living creature, so this one was chosen because of its low evolution. On a visit to Era, we would find the passing of day and night, the temperature, and the climate to all be very familiar to us. As Billy experienced, even the air would be very healthy for us. The oxygen content of the atmosphere in Era is 32.4%. with traces of argon and other gases at 0.3%, and nitrides around 67.3%. Surface gravity is 0.003 higher than Earth, and the density is 5.521, while the inclination of the axis angle is 22.99 degrees. The diameter of their planet at the equator is 12,749 kilometers, as the planet travels at 11.19 kilometers per second through space. Remarkably, their annual rotation is 365.25 days. Additionally, one day is 23 hours and 59 minutes. While the existence of a moon is not known, they keep a calendar of 13 months of 28 days, with a compensation of one extra month every 23 years. Living in a parallel world. When the ancestors of the Pleiadians, those ancient Lyran warriors led by Asael, were traveling through space and looking for a home, an error was made, and their fleet slipped a half-second out of normal time and landed in a part of the Pleiades that is not in the same dimension as Earth. Because of this, if we were to fly to the Pleiades that we see in the night sky, we would not find any life there, but instead an uninhabitable planet with a very young blue sun. The Pleiadians live in a half-second dimension out of that time frame we are in. When they come to Earth, they have to make a slight adjustment in their instruments to compensate for the difference in time and dimension in order for their ships to be seen, or else we could not perceive them at all. The Pleiadians are far older than we are in reference to their number of lifetimes they have led, and they now live a much more spiritual life. This means they are experiencing and learning more with their spiritual senses than with their physical material senses. The focus on spirituality is also part of why their average lifespan is 700 years long. They are human, just like us, with almost no differences. There are Pleiadians with every skin tone on Earth, but the white ones are whiter than ours, and their hair is usually white as well. It is a natural function of evolution that the body material becomes less dense, with less differentiation in pigmentation through multiple lifetimes, and the Pleiadians are several million years older than we are as spirit forms. When they first settled on the worlds that they now live on, they were 7 to 9 meters tall, approximately 21 to 28 feet tall. Their body size changed quickly within a few lifetimes because of the planet they live on, and they now are about the same size as Earth humans. They have no medical problems whatsoever, for they control their health through psychic balance. They feel that here on Earth all of our medical problems are caused by illogical thinking and poor choices. As we create our reality with our thoughts, we are forming harmful energetic charges which have negative effects on all of the cells in our bodies. These thought energies can be measured in polarities, such as positive or negative charges of electricity. If we continue with illogical thinking, we are creating charges of energy that depolarize the cells and have an effect on the performance of each individual cell, which causes illness faster and faster. It has long been known in some societies on Earth that our thoughts play an important part in our health and can contribute to a longer life, especially in the Eastern cultures where meditation is practiced as a means of controlling their thinking. In Western culture, we don't try to prevent illness through controlling our thoughts, but instead, we wait until the illness is obvious and then we treat it with chemicals, which are designed not to treat the source of the illness, but to put a chemical band-aid over top of the symptoms. Additionally, the American medical system wishes to never heal anyone, but keep them plugged in to the system for as long as possible. The Pleiadians say that they are not superhuman with great powers that we may think they possess. They are humans just like us, who benefit from the knowledge of many lifetimes. They are not teachers or missionaries in particular, and do not come on behalf of any god to give us the long-awaited peace, as cosmic creation consciousness does not confer any obligation on them to do so. They understand our right of free will and free choice to evolve on our own, and they remind us that peace will come only when the people of Earth take accountability for their own lives and learn to create their own reality. Relying on or believing that someone else or some other power is going to bring peace will make sure it never happens. The Pleiadians feel an obligation to other life forms to help out, but they will not interfere. Born in the Pleiades. Pleiadian men and women marry and have children just like we do. Probably the major difference in being born in the Pleiades is that their understanding of the reason for a birth is a little bit different from ours, due to their spiritual development being so much more advanced. Here on Earth, we're at a complete loss to provide the validity for reincarnation, but in the Pleiades it has become an exact science, allowing them to understand exactly who wants to be reborn and what the purpose is of their reincarnation. You see, many of the more spiritually advanced leaders of Era have the ability to make spiritual connection with the incoming person and read who they have been in their past life and what their purpose is of coming into this new life. A mother, for instance, will make a point of trying to find out what the name of the incoming person wants to call themselves, since the Pleiadians feel a person's name is an expression of not only their spiritual development, but has meaning relating to the path of education that their soul wishes to learn in that lifetime. They think of the incoming spirit as a person who has lived many other lifetimes and is beginning a new one for a specific reason or reasons. Because of this, they are reminded that this incoming spirit form has led many lives before and is now coming out of a sleep-like state to start another life. The idea of age means nothing when you consider that all of us have been young, middle-aged, and old many times before. To think that you are better, smarter, or somehow more advanced than someone who is younger than you is an impossible train of thought in the Pleiades. When a couple decides they would like to have a child, they meditate and contact or ask to be contacted by a soul who wishes to be reincarnated through them. Together, they open a window of opportunity so that the soul may come back into material life through them. The decision as to which parents the spirit form will come into is not entirely up to the soul or the parents, although there is a tendency for a spirit form to stay within the same family if possible, which opens up the possibility that your great-grandfather might become your daughter. Cosmic creation consciousness and angels, we may call them, have something to do with the mechanism of parent selection as well. This process is not completely understood by the Pleiadians because they recognize the importance of mystery in all things. They have, however, advanced to the point of spiritual understanding and cognition that allows them to procreate or cause people to be born at a certain time, such as they did with the old spirit form from Lak'esh. But they seldom do that. They are also able to contact a soul when it is on the other side, but they do not recommend it, saying it is uncomfortable for the spirit form. The soul does not know any more than it did when it was in material life, and usually does not want to be bothered. Once a woman becomes pregnant, within 3 weeks the incoming soul will decide whether or not to inhabit the new body that is being created. Abortion is allowed only in those first 3 weeks. This is the level of understanding and morality on the Pleiadian world. The mother and father both contribute some of their genetics in forming the body for the incoming person, of course. Later, as the brain is forming, the incoming soul will send impulses to signify how many brain connectors to create. So the wisdom of the spirit form is carrying from many other accumulated lifetimes can be handled by the brain once it is formed. Once the brain is developed, the spirit form then transfers a copy of all of its desired wisdom to bring with it on this time into the developing brain, where it will park its consciousness. During the following months of pregnancy, the mother will attempt to make spiritual contact with the incoming soul many, many times to become better acquainted, so she will have a better understanding of how to help out this person with their new life. The parents will know very soon if the incoming child was a relative in their recent past, and they are able to understand the path of learning that the individual is on. They can look into the previous lifetimes and see if there are emotional instabilities of any kind that need to be dealt with, or if there were events during that life that left trauma or mental illness that should be addressed. Remember, with an average lifetime of 700 years, they would know each other for approximately 600 years. They can tell if the spirit form was a happy and well-balanced person, or plagued with residual hostilities or anger, and what may have caused it. During the pregnancy, the parents will be able to learn much about the person coming in, so that they may have a much clearer understanding of how to assist them in their new incarnation. Since Pleiadian women are not possessive of the incoming person and do not consider them a creation of their own, it's more like a partnership with another soul. There is a more open attitude taken towards raising a child and sharing its development with others in the community, especially with other members of the family. This would seem very peculiar on Earth, since we think of our children as our own creations to mold and shape in our image. How often have you seen a proud parent boast that his son will become a great football player or a doctor or work in the family business? And isn't it common for us to guide our children to an image that we hold of them? If we stop for an instant and view our children as an eternal soul that is on a path of evolution and discovery and experience and learning for their own self, we might start to find some explanations for behavior that we are not able to understand, and possible personality traits that don't make sense to us. If we recognize that our children are eternal souls who have lived countless lives before and have brought forward wisdom from previous lives and goals for this one, we can begin to understand why we all have different aptitudes and different levels of intelligence and knowledge. Sometimes some children in a family seem completely different to the rest of the family. Yay! We are all on our own paths of discovery and learning and need different information at different times in order to continue to evolve. We do not learn the same lessons in life at the same time, so we must learn to give each other space to seek out answers to questions that are needed for our continued spiritual growth. Life is like a school where we are all in different grades and different classes. Some of us have teachers that love to play games, and some are very strict. Once the individual is born on Era, they have the capacity to understand their past lives and their chosen lessons in this new lifetime. Since the Pleiadians do not treat children as their own property, they give unconditional love and attention to all children and help each other with their education. Newly born people are helped emotionally and mentally by shielding them from any negativity until they can learn to think and understand themselves well enough to cope. The first 10 years of their lives are spent in education, which helps them gain complete understanding of whom they are and the path of growth that they chose for this lifetime. In other words, they are helped to understand the meaning and purpose of their past lives before they have to go out and deal with their current one. Only positive influences and environments are provided during these first 10 years, so they can become completely secure and well balanced within themselves. And then they are ready to be exposed to the various forces when they are better able to deal with them. Here on Earth, there is not yet an understanding of how to communicate well enough with an incoming spirit form to learn about their previous life, so we can't understand how to help them. We are simply born and thrown into a hostile world and forced to manufacture defensive emotions and behavior patterns to survive. Our lives on Earth are mostly hard and difficult, since we have no idea why we are here or what we're supposed to be doing. Not to mention living in a civilization that is controlled by power-hungry Darktilians who seek to control others, instead of living in a world based on love and wisdom. After those first 10 years of self-discovery, the next 70 years of life in the Pleiades are spent in further education. Maybe up to 20 professions are learned. Once they leave their educational years, they work 4 hours a day approximately and spend another 4 hours pursuing the proper balance of creativity and spiritual growth. Since Pleiadians believe the purpose of the material life is to gather information through the physical senses and then feed the soul the wisdom learned by the experience, the emphasis is put on personal growth and achievement based on what is good for the individual. The basic philosophy is understanding the importance of personal spiritual growth by taking 100% accountability for themselves and not relying on a god or a myth or an idol or a hero or any other outside influence whatsoever to solve their problems or take care of their own learning. Instead, the ability to communicate with one's own higher self is fostered, so each individual can easily come into contact with cosmic creational consciousness, which guides all beings in the universe. Only through understanding and cognition of the laws of cosmic creation consciousness can one ever hope to evolve their soul.